I loved the show. I watched it when it first came out, and I rewatched it.
Oh wow.
It's which probably is not a good idea. It's really dark.
Yeah, I mean it is.
Yeah, I'm like just sitting on my couch, just like scared of Paul Hauser. It's like, even though I know it's coming. I just think it's really solid, and I something that I love that I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about is like it's 6 episodes. It's tight.
Yeah.
It's not like this verbose 12 episode, 10 episode thing. You guys get
Yeah.
out, you tell a good story, you draw some really great characters. Great. So thank you. Long story short, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for watching it not once but twice.
yeah. Couldn't admit that, but against my better judgment. Um, so I guess a general question to ask is I was really drawn into the those first introductory scenes that you have with Taryn.
Yeah.
I kept thinking a lot of like the physical distance between the two of you.
Mm,
I imagine that is on a technical level, like a safety protocol. But I kept thinking about it in terms of how much maybe Lauren is not comforted in that distance, but
mm,
he's a very charming character played by a very charming actor. And I was
yeah.
wondering how conscious maybe Lauren is in trying not to be charmed by that. Because I thought that was I thought that every single time you guys were on screen together.
Yeah, yeah. I think what's interesting about these two characters is that they come from different worlds, very different backgrounds, and yet
Mhm.
they're both kind of they feel met in a way. Like they're
Mhm.
always 10 steps ahead of whoever they're speaking to. And with each other, she's had, a big chunk of time to research him, to get to know him. It's been years. She's had his entire life in her files, in her casework. She's listened to recordings of him. She knows every detail about
Mhm.
him in his life. So in that way, I think it's very hard to throw her off guard. And you
Mhm.
see how he is thrown off guard to certain degrees. There's that first scene where she calls out his temper
Yeah.
because he's getting impatient with her. And yet in episode two, at the top of episode two, where she's trying to get in, under his skin about the women, like what kind of women do you like, and
Yeah.
trying to draw connections with Larry, there's a moment that's so subtle, and it's a testament to Dennis's brilliance, where I can't remember exactly what the line is off the top of my head, but she's saying, okay, you like this kind of girl, blondes and brunettes, big
Mhm.
tits, whatever, small tits, it
Uh-huh.
doesn't matter for you. And she flubs a line, but immediately recovers. I wish I could remember the exact line right now.
Mm.
But it's so, and the way that I tried to play it too was that it doesn't phase me. It's in the text. So there's a
Oh.
moment where she stumbles, but then she recovers right away. And I think that there is this palpable kind of chemistry between them, and I don't even
Mhm.
think she allows herself to be charmed, or she's so sick of men like that, and she's surrounded, she
Yeah.
exists, she works in this sea of men. And so having said that, he is, as you mentioned, undeniably charming and captivating, compelling as a person,
Yeah.
and character. And so I think that what stops her from being, swooped away like everybody else is just her preparation, and the fact that
Mhm.
she just does not take any, shit from anyone.
Yeah. There is something about the quality of the way that the writing allows you as a performer to sort of uh I keep thinking about like when someone's like walking behind you and the person ahead like turns a corner and the person
Mm.
who's behind is like catching up to see where the person is next. That's sort of how I felt, especially in that scene about like what kind of women do you like? It was just
Yeah.
you keep like unfolding and folding on him, just sort of I don't know, like swirl around him to trap him. I don't know. I love that scene. That's a great scene. Um, I did want to ask about. There's a line that Greg, I think it's Greg Kinnear has to you. Um, I think it's halfway through the show where he says, where you say that you have somebody on the inside, and he said
Mm.
to you, "That's not police work; it's desperation." And
Yeah.
I was wondering, you sort of just mentioned that about being in a sea of men. I mean, how much do you think that Lauren is, I don't want to say underestimated, but I kind of want to say underestimated by just this profession of dudes that I feel like I feel like they run the world and everything like that, this, that, and the other. I don't know. I was curious about it because your character is constantly one of the only women on screen all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think what makes Lauren most relatable in my mind is the fact that she is constantly having to prove herself in a way, and you see her sort of at the beginning of her career when she's starting out more before or as she's sort of making her transition into a special agent, and how she's more like she has these sort of childlike qualities, this overt enthusiasm
Yeah.
and wit about her. And then you see later on how she kind of has to cover herself a little bit more. She
Mm.
has to lead with her like a thicker skin, and show everybody around her that they are not going to cross her. They, she has to be in control of every room she walks into, and if she slips even for a moment, somebody will try to jump on her. So I think, yeah, it absolutely plays into what Greg's character says, that the desperation. She's had to work 10 times harder than everyone else around her. She's
Yeah.
10 times better than what she does than anybody else around her, and yet she's constantly being undermined. It reminds me of that one scene, I think it's in episode 6, where we visit Gary Hall, and at their family home, and he makes a comment about her hair. Did you
Mm.
change your hair? And
Oh
she's
yeah.
like, nope, even though she clearly has changed her
Yeah.
hair since the last time we saw each other. And he goes on about it, and then he like hits on her. He's like, well, you look good. And she's like, thanks. So can we talk to you? And it's interesting how many women have come up to me and been like, that scene is so relatable, that is so real, because that's, as women, that's what we're constantly going through. It's a
Yeah.
little bit better now post Me Too, but yeah, the sort of like, even subtle sexual harassment you have to deal with. And can you
Hmm.
imagine a special agent in the FBI? FBI didn't even allow women in until the first 2 agents in, I think, 1972. And so in the 90s, it's still really, I mean, it's still not great now, but it's much
Yeah.
better. And again, ever since 2016 Me Too, things have been moving in the right direction, and we still have a long way to go. But I always
Mm.
think, like, Lauren, to be a woman and to be a woman of color surrounded by all these white dudes,
Yeah.
in that area of the country, it's just what she's had to overcome, what she's had to fight past and fight through is, yeah, kind of unimaginable, Herculean.
Yeah. Even just hearing you talk about it, sometimes I mean, I know the time, excuse me, I know the time period that the show takes place in. And it's sort of like I've seen those interactions where it's sort of like
Yeah.
a man will say something that seems so casual and it
Yeah.
meant to stop the entire interaction, stop the whole conversation. So I did really pick up on the comment where he says about her hair, and it's sort of like, no, we're gonna keep going this way. We're gonna keep
Totally.
moving.
Totally. And not make a meal out of it either.
Yeah,
She doesn't
yeah.
stop the conversation or the flow in order to say, you know what, you can't speak to me like that. It's
Mhm.
like she's so used to it. And women so often, especially at the more you rise into, powerful positions, you learn how to deal with it. And you
Yeah.
see her navigate that beautifully throughout, even with Jimmy. The way she answers to him as he tries to flirt with her and on the plane,
Mm.
as they're headed to Springfield, and in the dentist office, where he's like, I like what's happening here.
Yeah.
She just shuts it down without, going into, you have no right to speak to me that way. She's
Hmm.
able to change course, at the drop of a dime. I think that's what makes her so fascinating, is that she's able to stay 10 steps ahead and know even where Jimmy is going. Like, as soon as he
Yeah.
starts catching up, she changes course. So yeah, she's quite the tour de force.
And this might be sound like a weird thing to sort of, that's another like asset that all these men who are in her orbit, they don't even have to, they don't know what that's like. I feel like that's
Yeah.
something that makes it more like her, she's just like ready for anything that sort of comes her way. Uh,
Yeah.
and the thing that I love that you do is you aren't like you have so much poise and there's such a relaxed quality to you in a lot of these scenes that can be like really tense. Like I'm sure that Lauren doesn't want to make an interrogation scene like with Gary outside. That scene is so good. And the way
He's amazing.
it
He's amazing.
the way that those lines that you say come out so matter of factly
Mm.
hit so much better as if, if it was like made for a big dramatic moment. The whole scene would be completely off kilter if it was done like that. I think that and that's sort of something I wanted to ask about I don't say like interrogation style, but I
Mm.
know about maybe Lauren's preparedness whenever she is trying to get something from someone like the scene with Gary because I was so drawn into that scene every time I saw it.
Yeah. I mean, it always helps having, playing off of incredible actors. Like our
Hmm.
entire cast across the board, from the smallest characters, the actor who played the person who worked at the gas station, to
Oh yeah.
Karen. It's like every single character is so solid and so dropped in that it makes all of our jobs easy, because we're just literally responding and reacting.
Yeah.
And the preparation process for this was, I mean, every process is different. Every show, every film, every, play or musical, whatever, it all requires something different. But I feel like with this, it was a bit more athletic, a bit more vigorous, because
Mm.
we were block shooting 6 episodes at a time. So it was pretty much shooting a 6-hour movie. So we'd have like 3 scenes from episode 2, and then 2 scenes from episode 1,
Oh
and
wow.
then a scene from episode 6 or something. And as this is going, so I had a timeline just like meticulously prepared.
Ugh,
Um, and
wow.
then all the research that came with, making me feel like I was allowed to play an FBI special agent, and really dropped
Mm.
into what it means to be. I can relate to what it means to be a woman at that time, and yet I have to like really just like put myself in the head heart space of the things that I can't do or can't say, because
Hmm.
I have given myself permission today to speak up at any time. If something doesn't feel right, call it out immediately. And
Yeah.
that's something I had to train, and that's something that Lauren has to sort of suppress still,
Hmm.
because of the period, because of
Mm.
the geography, because of the circumstances. And so like if she's going to lose Jimmy, she's not going to be able to get him on her side if she just says, you know what, you can't speak to me this way, this is totally inappropriate,
Right.
I'm not. She has to keep bringing him in, and that includes a
Mm.
little bit of flirtation. So
Yeah.
the scene you mentioned with Gary was interesting, and I love the fact that it comes towards the end, because you see her dynamic develop with Jimmy. You see her relationship and the sort of familiarity and history. You feel the history with her and Miller. And then
Mm.
you see something new with Gary. And this is like, Miller is the one who feels more triggered in that situation.
Mm.
He's lost his patience, and he's like, he's short with him. And Lauren still knows how to be gentle with him, because I think she's, and any agent that I have spoken to, that I've read up on, that I've
Mm.
researched, has always said you have to bring all of yourself to the job, and you're really
Mm.
trying to connect as a friend with anybody, any informant or anybody that you're trying to get information from, right? You can't
Mhm.
come from an accusatory, or you can't an aggressive place. It has to be with an openness. And I think
Mhm.
in that moment, Gary is already so on edge, and he's so vulnerable. And the way she deals with him, it's not like she strays away from the facts. She stays on point, but the tenderness in which
Mm.
she speaks to him, I feel in a way disarms him, and cracks him a
Mm.
little bit open, into where he goes next as a character and with the story.
Yeah, because it really reminded me of how Jimmy, when he's transferred, after he's transferred,
Yeah.
um, you have to me as a viewer, when I watched it, I was just like, when, you know, when is enough listening as a person who's trying to catch another person? How much do you push? Like, how much do you press? And I really saw a parallel from Jimmy's whole arc in the entire 6 episodes to like the 5 or 6 minute scene that you have with Miller and Gary. I love that that was towards the end because it
Mhm, mhm.
the two like arcs are really like coming to a head at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see the way that all of these characters are changed by this case, by this
Mm-hmm.
work, by these people. You know, you see how Lauren is this hard ass who's like, Miller says, you know, well, what if something happens to him inside? She's like,
Yeah, she's like, well,
his problem, you know, that's not my problem. He should have thought that before, you know, he started dealing coke to have the sister of,
yeah.
you know. And so there's this sort of cold, like cut, you know, to the point, to the facts quality about her. And then you see her at the end of episode 3 show up to visit him
Mm-hmm.
in prison, and she's genuinely shaken. She's genuinely concerned for him and his
Yeah.
safety. And so
Mm.
you see this sort of, and I think this is something Dennis does so beautifully. All the characters at various points are so in control of their lives, are standing firmly in their lives and in
Mm.
their paths. And then when you least expect it, he pulls the rug under from each and every person. You see it with Gary, you see it with Miller, you see it with Lauren, you see it, of course, with Jimmy and with
Yeah.
Larry. I mean, it's devastating when you see it with Larry, which
Yeah.
is crazy because he's a psychotic murderer, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you
Ah.
still feel something when he has the rug pulled from underneath them. And again, that goes to Dennis's, to our directors as well, and
Mm.
to all of the actors for being able to just
Yeah.
trust the text and not having to add on. You know, we had a really
Mm.
solid foundation. And I think that gave us all the sort of confidence that we needed.
Yeah. Anytime I see Dennis Lehane's name anywhere, it
I
was just,
know.
right. It's gonna be like a really, you know, complex
Yeah.
detective story, but like the characters are, oh my God, I'm I love everything that he does. Um,
Me too.
and that the sort of the arc of Lauren that you speak about, even from 1 to 3, like I remember that exchange with like, what happens if he gets like shanked in the shower? Like, what is she gonna do? And then you look so different. Obviously, you know, she was playing a part when she came to visit him as his girlfriend,
Yeah.
but it's just
Yeah.
like even your demeanor is so different. It was
Mhm.
so drawn in a different way. Uh,
Thank
I guess one last question before I let you go, because I didn't realize we've already been talking for like 20 minutes.
Oh, well, I didn't realize that either.
um, you have this really great. I love the way that you say this line in the very end, when Jimmy is drawing the map on the table, and I think that you say, "We did it," and then you quickly correct
Mhm.
yourself and you say, "You did it." I
Mhm.
don't know what that might mean for that character to sort of,
Mhm.
because anytime that we don't get a lot of interaction between Lauren and Jimmy when he's after he's transferred, except really that one scene. And
Yeah.
it was always in the back of my mind of how much she is concerned for him and how much
Mhm.
she is thinking about him when she's trying to do like other stuff, like just his personal safety. And I felt like that was a really beautiful way and a really subtle way to sort of acknowledge what he sacrificed for this, like his mentally, physically, all the crazy shit that goes along with it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, throughout from the very beginning, there's this very fluid, sort of kaleidoscopic dynamic that they have. At certain points, it feels like, you know, she's his love interest. And then at other points, it feels like
Mm-hmm.
she's his mother and then his sister and then, you know, this ex that he hates or something. And so in that moment, and when you were talking about it, it made me emotional because I think the bond that is created, and this is true to life. Any agent I've spoken to, I had kind of an FBI mentor, Eugene Casey, who I
Mm-hmm.
would call anytime I had a question or wanted more stories to feed my own sort of case file of my library, just so that I can feel more confident playing an agent. But he was extremely helpful, and he shared a lot of stories, and every single one, whenever he worked with an informant, whenever he, worked on different cases, you build a relationship with the people that you are working with, right?
Mhm.
Even if they're criminals, you sort of develop this rapport that, and it's almost like trauma bonding in a way, because you
Mm.
share this one world together.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain level of intimacy that's explored, and in that moment, in that scene, it feels like everything they've been through, it's all led up to that moment, and
Mm.
giving him the credit that he deserves. She never wanted to give him any credit for them, but in
Yeah.
that moment, it's almost like she takes on that maternal, sort of motherly, you did this, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. Hmm.
We couldn't have done this without you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite moments of the whole thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
it was,
that was such a trip to get to that moment too.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we rehearsed it, so we had to evacuate because of Hurricane Ida,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
so we were pretty much gone for 3 weeks. We had a 3-week hiatus unexpectedly, and then we got back to set, and that scene was the first scene up at like 7 a.m. and
Oh
it's the
wow.
climax of the show. This is towards the end of our shoot, and we're coming from this 3-week break.
Hmm.
So we get in the room, and Joe Chappelle, who's an incredible director and leader, was directing that episode, and Taryn and I go in and we read the words, and we kind of like fumble through it, and Joe's like, can we invite the rest of the crew to watch? And Taryn's like, Sep, how do you feel? I'm like, not great. And he's like, all right, let's rehearse. So we rehearsed
Okay.
that scene for like an hour, finding, even though there isn't much movement, it's not like there's
Yeah.
much choreography or blocking, but we found what felt right, what felt true. And
Mm.
then from that moment, we were able to shoot it in a very short period of time, because we both felt grounded and confident in what it was. Sometimes the
Wow.
smallest things make the biggest difference, and it like locks you in to the heart of the scene. And
Yeah.
grateful that to have collaborators who give that space and opportunity for rehearsal and for collaboration, for talking things through and trying things that
Mm.
don't work, in order for us to find what does work. It's
Yeah.
rare.
Okay. I love
Yeah.
that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I love the show a lot,
Mm.
and I did want to say a film that I really love that you're in is Killing of Two Lovers. I feel like
Oh.
that was like sadly sort of a COVID. There was like certain movies that are like COVID victim movies, and it was sort of like it never came out near me, and then I
Yeah, yeah,
got to watch it, and I was just like, oh God, that movie killed
yeah.
me. Just wanted to say that before I let you go.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's a similar thing in a way. It's this patient storytelling. You have
Yeah,
directors and
yeah.
writers with a vision, and I find that sometimes in the content that I watch, or I see that there's this rush to get to the point.
Hmm.
And I love discovering filmmakers and collaborators who trust a patient storytelling process. And I feel like
Me
with
too.
both Blackbird and The Killing of Two Lovers, it's not about the next, uh, act of violence or sex scene, or it's
Hmm.
about what is happening inside these characters' minds, what is happening around them, and I
Mm.
just, yeah, it's such a pleasure, and it's so inspiring to work with people who have that ability to tell stories in this way.
Yeah, I always say I'm a sucker for restraint. You give me something that is like sort of quiet or still, and it's like 8 episodes long, and I'll just be like, okay, just
Totally. Me too. I
yeah,
love being pulled in, I
yeah,
love being like leaning into the story and wanting more.
yeah.
That's great art, whether it's a book or a song or a film, or a show. It's like being able to wonder after it's ended, like
And
what if, or where did this go, or where could this go? It's leaving, your imagination alive and sort of on fire. I love that.
God forbid something is in a gray area. Everyone needs an answer to
Exactly.
everything. God forbid. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I call that gimme culture. Everyone's like, gimme, gimme, I need the answers to everything, and I hate it.
Yeah,
Well,
totally. Totally.
so thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
I'm glad that there's more like it's being mentioned on a lot of year-end stuff. So if people miss it,
Yeah.
and they can catch up on it. I think it's going to be end up on my top 10 on at the site. So,
Oh,
Shin,
thank
thank you for
you.
the great work and thank you for your generosity.
Thank you so much. Such a
Yeah,
pleasure. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. Have a good rest of your day. Stay safe.
You
Happy
too. You
holidays.
too.